do a territorial acknowledgement. I'd like to acknowledge the fact that I do have the pleasure and honor to work, study, and live in a region south of the Fraser River, which overlaps with the unceded traditional and ancestral lands of the Kwantlen, Musqueam, Katsi, Semiahmoo, Tsawwassen, Kikite, and Coquitlam peoples. So for everyone joining us today, and before I introduce the panelists, I thought I'd go over a couple of housekeeping items here. Yes, as Michelle mentioned earlier, please ensure that your mics are on mute during the panel discussion today, of course, except for the panelists when you're answering those questions. I would also like to introduce myself. I'm Chantal. I am the KPU career coach, and I welcome all of you today, and I'm really happy that you're all here. So here's what we'll be covering today during this hour where we're all together. I'm going to introduce the panelists, and then they'll each have a little bit of time to introduce themselves to us, include their bios, and a little bit about their backgrounds. We will then review some questions, and the panelists will have time to answer those questions for us, providing us with a plethora of information. And we'll do that in two segments. One will be in a group, small group questions, and the other one in individual. At that point, we'll then open it up for Q&A for any of the students that have any other outstanding questions. We'll wrap it up, and don't forget to stick around because we do have a draw at the end of our discussion today. So those of you that stick around till the end, you could potentially win a $20 gift card from Tim Hortons. So stick around for that. Quick reminder, what we're all here for, of course, is the Career Day, which is on Wednesday, March 9th. And tomorrow we do have another webinar hosted by Michelle, our lovely moderator, and myself as well, about how to navigate the platform and how to stand out in a crowd at Career Day. And then after the Career Day event on March 9th, we will have effective interviews, so a webinar there on Friday, March 11th. So without further ado, I'm going to go introduce each of our panelists that were gracious enough to be here with us today. So in order, we have Lisa Hanson, who is the Talent Acquisition Advisor at Pinchin. We have Helen Wong, who is the Human Resources Regional Home Health Recruiter with Bayshore Home Health. Gary Toor, who is the Talent Acquisition Manager for Canada at NRI Distribution. Kelly TeBrinke, who is the Assistant Manager of Talent Attraction and People Experience at Prospera Credit Union. Sharon Lamb is a Human Resources Generalist at Big Brothers of Greater Vancouver, and Rebecca Dernfeld is the Senior Student Recruitment Officer over at CPABC. So why don't I go ahead and get each of you to introduce yourselves. Feel free to turn your cameras on, and we'll start with you, Lisa.
Sure, absolutely. So thanks so much for having me. Glad to be here. So I have worked in recruitment for the past 6 years. I've been with Pinchin for the past 6 months. And what I love most about recruitment is honestly meeting people, making those connections, and finding the right fit. So that's a little bit about me.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that, Lisa. And Helen, over to you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name's Helen. I'm with Bayshore Home Health. I have been working with them for over a year now, probably a year and a half, but I've only been recruiting for Bayshore for about like 6 or 8 months or so. For my background, it's mostly revolving around sociology. So I was a graduate from KPU, surprisingly enough. So it's really fun to be back and to be touching base with all the students. But yeah, I think it's very important to just have this career day and getting everyone involved and to just discuss with all the recruiters and everyone in HR as well. So yeah, happy to be here. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Helen, and great to hear that we have an alum on the panel today. That's wonderful. Gary, let's take it over to you.
Hey, hello, everyone. Thanks for the introduction earlier. I'm Gary Toor. I've been working in talent acquisition and human resources for about 10 years. Most of my focus has been on, especially with NRI distribution, where I've been here for about 5.5 years, has been focused on just aligning our organizational values and directly with our recruitment strategies and our onboarding strategies. Really a focus on competency-based recruitment has been my specialty and what I focused on over the last 4 years here. Having experience in all aspects of full cycle recruitment, I look forward to all the questions that you have, and hopefully I can provide some value to you today.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that, Gary. Kelly, over to you.
Thanks. Hello, all. I'm happy to be here and to share a little bit about myself. I have a background in marketing and communications. I have some fond memories of event planning as well when I worked at the Chilliwack Cultural Center, founding the Fraser Valley Culture and Craft Beer Festival. If you're ever out this way, it's a fabulous event, raising funds for the center. And then a few years back, joined Prospera Credit Union, and initially as a talent attraction specialist. Now I'm leading the team of 4 recruiters, and we just truly enjoy connecting and developing relationships with candidates, bringing them on board and offering them their dream job.
That's what we love to hear. Thanks so much, Kelly. And Sharon Lamb, over to you.
Oh, I was just applauding Kelly. Thank you so much, Chantal, and thank you, hello panelists and all guests. Thank you so much for having me. My name's Sharon Lamb. I'm the HR generalist at Big Brothers of Greater Vancouver. We're a nonprofit organization. I've been with Big Brothers for about just over a year now. I've been in HR for just over 5 years as well. And I would say that, how should I say it? My passion, my biggest passion is to develop and support staff to have a meaningful career in their workplace. And being a generalist, I also focus not just on recruitment, but onboarding and all those other things related to HR. So I also just make sure we balance the needs of the organization as well.
Okay, heavy load. Thank you for that, Rebecca. Sorry, Sharon.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And over to Rebecca.
Hi, everyone. I think you can hear me. My name is Rebecca Dernfeld. So it's actually Dernfeld, not Dernfeld. And just in case anyone is looking for me online or on LinkedIn, so DIRN. And I am a senior student recruitment officer with the Chartered Professional Accountants of British Columbia. I'm very happy to be here today. I also started my post-secondary journey with Kwantlen many years ago. I did 2 years for general studies. Then back in those days, because I'm a bit older, I transitioned to UBC to get my full degree. Now you can do so at Kwantlen, which is great. And so very happy to be here. I focus on providing information to students and recent alumni about the CPA pathway. So how to become a CPA. And my career journey itself, I've gone through some career transitions, but I ended up becoming a career counselor back in 2014. And so I'm very passionate about not only the recruitment process when it comes to finding or speaking for, advocating for excellent talent moving into the labor market, but also advocating for students to understand their own career exploration and be able to effectively do their own job searching and be happy in the roles that they choose down the road, whether or not that is to be a CPA.
Excellent. Rebecca, thank you so much. Duly noted about your last name. My apologies on that. And lovely to hear we have another CDP, or we have a CDP on the panel. Most appreciated, and another KPU alum. So welcome. I would like to note that ICBC, who was originally scheduled for the panel today, does send their regrets. They were unable to attend today's panel, but of course they will be attending the Career Day event. So please do to join them there for that event. Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to just slide straight into group panel questions. So I've more or less clustered the questions so that there's at least 2 people answering one question there. And to get us started, I will ask Helen and Lisa to answer this 2-part question. We'll start first with Helen. So Helen, Can recruiters tell when someone uses a resume template? And the second part of that question is, why do you or don't you recommend using them?
For me personally, I can tell when someone uses a resume template, and for me, it's completely okay. I love templates, in my opinion. They're very clear, super organized, super neat. There are some that can be a little bit more not as neat or clear, but we can get back to that a little bit later. But I did note that it's just super important to jot down in your resume or to note down in your resume to use strong bullet points to stand out to other recruiters as well, or other HR members, just because templates can be used with everyone, all other applicants. So it's important to just stand out a lot more. And as I said, some of the templates can be a little bit more unprofessional. It can be very colorful for some. It can be two-paged. It can be asking for additional information like a photo, things like that. So it's important to just debrief maybe it or review it with a colleague or even a professor, someone that you trust or someone that's even in the field, and make sure it's relevant to the field that you're applying for. So, yeah.
Okay, great. So Helen, it sounds to me like you do recommend using them as well, as long as they're using a template that's very clear and easy to follow, but you do actually like template resumes.
Yes, for me personally, yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Helen. And Lisa, over to you.
Right. So in terms of me being able to tell if a resume is a template, I would say a lot of the times no. I can tell if it's an Indeed resume, because that's typically, the applicant just putting in some information. It's a standard thing. So no, I can't always tell if it's a template. I do recommend using templates, so I definitely do agree with Helen. It's a great way to keep the information organized, and it creates a proper flow of things, and it keeps, just in terms of organizing content, absolutely. So I definitely recommend using a template.
Okay. I have to say, this is new and exciting information for me. So it's interesting to hear your opinions about templates. So I'm happy to hear that. Thank you. Okay, moving on. So we do have a guest panelist here. We have Julia Denker, who is the director of the Career Development Center here at KPU. And Julia has been kind enough to step in for this particular question in lieu of ICBC, because as a director of the Career Development Center, she has certainly sat in on and hosted, of course, plenty of interviews in her time. So this question in particular is addressed to Sharon and Julia, our guest panelist. And the question is, what makes a candidate stand out in an interview? And Sharon, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Thank you so much, Chantel. I feel like a candidate really stands out, and I actually take this two ways. So I can take this: a candidate can stand out positively, and a candidate can stand out negatively. So I'll talk about both. So I feel like a candidate really stands out to me when they really know our org. When I ask the question, what do you know about our organization? Sometimes it just seems like a filler question or a, like just an intro, like kind of ice-breaking question. But for me, it really shows me how much the candidate has researched our org, how much they actually care about our clients, and whether or not their work ethos aligns with our vision and mission and our values. So that's what makes a candidate stand out. If they're talking in a way that it already almost sounds like they're an employee and their goal is to work in a way that serves our clients, that's what really captures my attention and makes that candidate stand out. So I recommend doing that by looking at the organization or company's website that you're going to look at. Really seek out what is their mission, what is their values, what are their values, and make sure that those agree with you. And if you're just doing it for the sake of just speaking and just trying to be impressive without really connecting with them, as a hiring or recruiter, I can tell. it's very easy to tell when people are faking it. So try to make a genuine connection. Another thing that I really notice candidates stand out is a combination of knowledge for the role or the tasks and character. Recruiters ask, or hiring managers can ask behavioral or situational questions that can that seem one way, but what they actually do is try to figure out what is that person's working character. Are they going to be honest? Are they going to actually speak up? Are they going to go against a manager, their direct supervisor? We want to figure these things out. And so again, if your knowledge and your character really shine, then that's going to have you stand above the other candidates. I guess the last thing, I kind of already touched on this, is the negative aspect. We can really tell if you're faking it, if you're using too many buzzwords, if a candidate is schmoozing and really just trying to, make themselves seem passionate, but not really having the content to follow through. We can tell, and it really stands out. And for me, it puts your resume at the bottom of the basket. So yeah, that's what I see standing out. Thanks so much.
Really great insight for sure, Sharon. I particularly like where you said if I see that they're already talking like an employee, right? They see themselves there, right? That's their motivation. They want to be there. It's not fake or they're not trying to fake their way in. I think that's really helpful information. So thank you for that. All right, over to you, Julia.
Hi, everyone. I'm happy to be here today. As Chantal mentioned, I'm the director of the Career Development Center. And I have been, actually, I've been working in post-secondary education for about 25 years. So I've been hiring students and staff for about 25 years. And I do concur with Sharon, making that genuine connection is so critically important. But I wanted to share some just really basic tried and truths. Some of the, when you're in the moment in the interview, some of the things that I'm looking for. So your entrance is so important. So the long-standing tried and truths really do work. Be neat in appearance, be courteous, be enthusiastic, be overall affable, smiling and nodding. And so your greeting is really important. I'm looking to see how you enter onto the scene. Body language and that tone of voice really make a mark. And then throughout the interview, these things we always talk about, but maintaining eye contact is so important. So start with the person who's asking the question. It might just be one person, so keep that eye contact going, but also be sure to sweep the room. If there are other individuals sitting around the table, and it might be the virtual table, which is a whole other thing, but once we are, or if you are in person, sweeping around the room, this is engagement, right? This is real engagement. Provide different examples when you're answering questions. Don't always land on the same example, which I've seen over and over again over the years. And by the way, I love to hear about volunteer work and participation in clubs and on committees and boards and school projects and so on. All of these roles that illustrate leadership and or teamwork. Don't be too long-winded about it though, but don't be too brief. At the end of the interview, ask questions that show that you've paid attention throughout the interview, like that you've really listened to, that you have been, I'm going to use the word again, engaged throughout the interview, and that illustrate that you've done your research. Just going back to what Sharon was saying, you've done your research on the organization. And honestly, don't make that mistake of asking a question at the end of the interview where you can so easily find that answer on the company's website. So that we do encounter that. So be careful about that. Ask questions. What do you like most about your job and working for this organization? And how will this position interact with you, for example? And always close on a positive note. And maybe with a little bit of a sell and reiterate your interest and your excitement, what it was prior to the interview, and that you're even more excited now that you've learned more about this organization and the position, and this is why I feel I'll be the best fit. The other thing I do want to mention is a thank you email or note goes a long way for me. And that makes a mark for me. Customize it, reference something from the interview itself. I want to see that, and you will, put yourself back front of mind when it comes to my consideration. And overall, I'm always looking for team fit. Just going to let you know that. So show your essence, show your best qualities, and make that connection. Just bringing it back to what Sharon was saying as well. That's what I'm looking for.
Excellent, Julia. Thank you so much for that. And particularly just going back to your one point about pulling from various experiences, whether it's work experience or volunteerism, provide various examples. So in order to be able to provide various examples, pull from all of the experiences that you have. So that's really helpful information. Thank you for that, Julia. And thank you again for providing us with your insight. Okay, so this one is for the other three panelists, for Rebecca, Gary, and Kelly. And the question is, now I don't have any prior experience in the area that I'm interested in. How can I get into a new career with no prior experience except my degree? And for this, we'll get started with Rebecca.
Okay, great question and a great follow-up to such insightful responses from the other panelists. Following up on the topic of being able to take from experiences outside of your education, such as volunteer and otherwise, one of my responses to this is focusing on ways that you can build experience in your time when you're a student, even if it's not paid experience. So that's one option. It's, if you don't have any right now, that's absolutely okay. We all start somewhere. And if you are considering moving into an industry with no prior experience, and you do have the education, your degree, then you can start to think about, well, where might I be able to place my value? And that might be being a volunteer, being a committee member, being able to support existing events or activities that are happening within the industry. Now, if you're in a situation where you're applying to a job, you don't have prior experience, and you still want to apply to that job with your educational background, you can absolutely pull from your education. So think about what you have accomplished as a student at Kwantlen that is relevant to the industry you'd like to work in. And so consider that experience as valued and relevant experience. If you spend 4 years studying and working on projects and engaging with faculty members and being able to maintain a strong GPA, all of that is indication that you have a very solid skill set that is relevant to the industry. They may still want experience within that industry, and that is where those additional extracurricular activities or paid experience comes into play. But that does not discredit what you have accomplished as a university student. So my recommendation, and I'm sure there will be others, is to really think about, when you look at a job posting, what they're asking of you. What are the skills, the competencies, the experiences they're looking for in the ideal candidate? Think about how you have somehow either directly or indirectly done the same things or obtained the same types of qualifications while being a student. And consider how you want to tell that story. So you might want to talk about projects. You might want to talk about the professors that you may have worked with or engaged with closely and the types of research they do and how you have learned from them that is relevant to the industry. You also would like to talk about transferable skills. So think about all those other skills that aren't necessarily technical or technically related to the industry, but are transferable in terms of how you work with others, how you engage on a team, how you communicate with clients and internal and external stakeholders. So those are also skills you can pull from the educational side of your portfolio, in addition to those technical or industry relevant skills that you're developing as part of your educational background.
This is so incredibly relevant, Rebecca, for the students that we have here today. And one thing in particular that I did pick up from the really great bits of information that you provided here was to be present where you are and to use the time as a student to pick up those skills that are necessary and to do kind of what you can in the moment. I mean, we have to start somewhere, right? So it sounds to me like you're suggesting, if there's a career direction that you want to go, start the process now of getting yourself closer to there. So that's very, very relevant for our group. Thank you for that, Rebecca. All right, Gary, we'll move over to you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Rebecca. That was, a very good point. I'd reiterate exactly what she said. If you don't have that experience, putting yourself in a position where you apply your current skills, either gained through group projects, which I know everyone probably, sighed a little bit there, but I promise you, that's what the real world is like on these roles, and they really are applicable. And your volunteering experience, just to reiterate what Julia had said before, that is critical to showing, hey, I can apply these skills I've learned to these, to this position I don't necessarily have direct experience in. To add to that, you really should look to network while you're in school. It's such a huge tool for you. You go through, there's so many different events. Today is an example, there's a bunch of people you're chatting with, being able to connect with them via LinkedIn, different, networking events that occur in our area. Obviously, with COVID, not a lot of in-person ones are happening, but I wouldn't be surprised to see those opening up soon. It's such a good opportunity for you to connect with people you normally wouldn't be able to speak to. And it gives you an opportunity to explain why you would be of value to that organization, how you could bring value to a role that you don't necessarily have experience in. Looking for that networking, and then also, especially for individuals who are really changing into a really different field, look to organizations that have those opportunities that you're looking for and get your foot in the door of the organization. Getting your foot in with that organization, you can now show, those hiring managers or those departments the value that you bring. Especially a lot of organizations value that internal promotion and that pipeline that they have over, going externally. Speaking from experience, I know certainly in our organization, we do that. An example would be we have students who are currently, in school for software development, computer science. They're working in our warehouse. We're going to be giving those individuals the first opportunity for junior roles because they understand our business. We know who they are. They've proven their skill set. They've proven that they are willing to work towards their goal, and they've connected with our hiring manager, so they feel comfortable giving this individual an opportunity. Whereas they're doing something right now that is the complete opposite of necessarily where they want to be or what they're going to do, and they're doing that while in school, part-time, whatever it may be. So there's different ways you can get your foot in the door with these organizations, even if it isn't the role that you're looking for right away.
Great, Gary. I'm so happy that you brought up the power of networking and LinkedIn. That was a webinar that we delivered, or that I delivered last week, I believe it was. Bit of a blur now. In the lead up to Career Day, and the incredible importance and power of networking and impact that can have. So I'm really happy that you brought that up and supported my webinar. So thanks for that. All right, moving over to Kelly.
Okay, great. I have really appreciated all that Gary and Rebecca has shared, and I'll do some piggybacking on some pieces and then add a couple of my own. So when it comes to volunteer work, I had that jotted down as well. So I wanted to give an example. At Prospera, we hire for a role entitled Financial Solutions Manager. And when you're looking at the description, you'll notice that it asks for proven sales experience. Perhaps you don't have proven sales experience. And I just want to encourage a volunteer position where you could be involved on a committee selling sponsorship opportunities, for an example, and be able to share about that in your interview. So you're truly gaining that experience needed. And then when it comes to what Gary was just noting, applying for an entry-level role, I very much agree. So stay focused on your career path, ensure your direct manager, once you're in that entry-level role, has a clear idea of where you want to go, and then go after those designations and licenses needed for the next step. Even ask And it's very likely, especially at Prospera, there's education reimbursement through many organizations. So reach out to that learning and organizational development team at your organization and see if you can't get that reimbursed. And then my final tip would be asking for an informational interview. So this is an informal discussion with a hiring manager. Perhaps you realize there's not enough qualifications on your resume, or you don't have that designation or license needed. Ask for the informational interview where you're coming with questions, and in the meantime, getting to know this person who you'd ideally like to be hired by. It's a great way to build your network.
Kelly, excellent information. I love the fact that you're plugging the information meeting again, something that connects us to the importance of networking. Transferable skills mentioned there again, ways that you can make that connection between, right, the proven sales skills and how you can perhaps gain those skills ahead of time in a volunteer role. And then also kind of supporting what Gary had mentioned already about the importance of entry-level positions within a company, right? Going back to what someone had said earlier about the importance of connecting with a company and really proving that you're interested in being there. And what better way to do that than to, go after an entry-level position with the company in order to move up once you're there. So really, really excellent points, Kelly. To Rebecca, Gary, and Kelly, thank you all for that. Now I'm paying attention to the time here. I see that we're actually a few minutes ahead of schedule. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to go back to this one, to this two-part one, and put it out to the rest of the panel, because I am a little bit surprised that templates are actually considered okay and in fact favorable. And I'm wondering what the rest of the panel, if you could just provide a very brief response to this as well. So Gary, just going down my list, Gary, what are your thoughts on a resume template? What do you think of them?
Yeah, I have no issue with it. I'm not so focused on whether you're using a template or not as I am with the content on it. We want to know exactly what that experience is there. I'd rather you use the template if it means it's going to be structured and clean. One thing to keep in mind, some of these roles you're applying for, we may be looking through 60 different resumes. Some 200 plus, depending on what your filters are for them. So really, it's important to understand that the more clear and concise and information that we're looking for is available, the better it is. So I do promote templates as well. And yeah, you can tell when someone's using them, but it's not going to impact whether or not you're going to get that role if we're able to identify that you are using one. It just makes it easier. It's just important to use the right template, is what I'll say. Don't if you're applying for a sales position or you're applying for an IT role, you can see right now that the resumes are going to be very different. The content we want is going to be very different. And you can look for examples online on that as well, just making sure you're clear and use the right template for the right role.
Excellent point. Kelly, over to you. What are your thoughts on templates?
I welcome a template, and building on what others have said, it keeps experience and education quite clear and easy to read. What is difficult to read are the Indeed applications. I wouldn't even call them resumes. So I'm guessing when someone is building their profile on Indeed, they can simply click apply to an organization's role, and then that Indeed will gather and roll up all of what you've inputted into your profile, which makes for a very easy experience. Unfortunately, on our end, on the recruiter side, it's quite a messy resume. So I encourage you to apply with a template resume or a resume that you've put together yourself, opposed to with your Indeed profile.
Okay, that is extremely important intel, and I'm sure all the students really appreciate that, because I do know that Indeed is a pretty common site for a lot of students to use. So I appreciate that for sure. Okay, perfect. And Sharon, I don't think I.
Not yet, and I'd love
Okay.
to bring a different perspective. I guess it depends on how we define template. I'm assuming most of our panelists are referring to, you know, the kind of thing that if you just type in resume template on Google, then you can just find your, you know, thing to pop in, your appropriate fields and such. Also, I can imagine template being used as kind of like your standard, and it's like the one resume you send out to like 20 jobs. And if we're talking about that sense of a template, and sometimes maybe you'll tweak one or two things here and there. Maybe you'll change the job title. You know, maybe that's your template where you pretty much have all your content the exact same. You just switch out job title. Maybe you switch out a couple other words. I don't recommend those. If that is any plan for students, I really recommend tailoring your resume very specifically to each job, and that takes time and it sucks. It really does. But like, unless it's retail and you're just applying to 20 retail places, that's fine. I'm sure it's fine. But if you're trying to really get your foot in a career and you really want to have something meaningful to put on your resume, please use please tailor each resume very specifically to that organization and to that role. Yes, it takes time, but if you look at that role's job posting, you can use a lot of the same wording. I wouldn't put it verbatim. Never do that. But you know, take keywords that they want, because maybe they're looking for someone who has a particular skill set, and maybe you can speak to that. It's just that your original resume didn't use that particular word to describe that skill set. So maybe you want to tailor it very specifically to that job posting that you're applying to, so that you can get more attention from recruiters. We can notice these kind of things.
Okay, great. Yeah, so absolutely, Sharon. Customizing templates are okay, but please make sure to customize and tailor each and every time. That's what we get from that for sure. And Rebecca, we'll go over to Rebecca. What are your thoughts on templates?
Yes, I'll just add a couple of added thoughts, because everything that's already been shared has been excellent. I feel, in addition to customizing a template and being mindful of applicant tracking systems and what information you need to have in your resume so that it is noticed by a system if it's being used before it might get into the hands of a recruiter or HR professional, is to also think about what your network contacts are sharing with you about the company, the position, and your future there based on the role you're looking at. So one thing to keep in mind when you're focusing on customizing a resume, just to expand on that, is to also consider what additional information can you include in that resume that would further enhance your application that may not be highlighted in the job posting. That's not to say that you want to disregard the job posting. You very much want to include that language from the job posting and speak to what they're asking of you. But sometimes and often I find a network contact who is working or has worked within that company or for that employer will give you further insights into, or what I call nuggets of information about the job and what will be expected of you. And you may want to further customize a template by adding in that additional information and how you could add value to what is going to be expected of you in a more nuanced way.
Okay, great. Thank you, Rebecca. Yeah, so take the template, use it for its structure and its clarity, but feel free to add some sections in there in order to help you customize for a particular role. Thank you for that. Okay, so let's go ahead and move forward. Now we're going to dive into some single panel questions. And for that, we'll just get started straight away with Sharon. Sharon, is the application process very different between applying to volunteer roles as opposed to paid positions? Please explain. And just a reminder that Sharon does come to us from Big Brothers of Greater Vancouver, which is why this question was directed to her. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you, Chantel. So we have two types of volunteer roles. We have the volunteer roles where you can apply and actually participate in our programs as a mentor. That's what our organization is about. We're about offering youth mentorship and experiencing the amazing impacts from mentorship. So you can volunteer to be a mentor, and and I see that more as like very social community type of volunteering. We also have the practicum type volunteering, where it's more like practicum students or volunteer positions that are really admin related, where they're not necessarily community related. So maybe I'll speak. Chantal, was this question more about for the community or for like career type of volunteer?
I would go with career type volunteer.
Okay, great. So if you are applying, so yes, there is it's not a huge, no, I would say there is a difference. And the major difference would be experience. Volunteer is usually easier. It's definitely much less responsibility. You are not expected you're not expected with certain performance measures when you're applying for a practicum or volunteer role. And so oftentimes, you don't really have to have a huge extensive resume just to apply for a volunteer position unless it's something like really competitive. But otherwise, what they're looking for is just being able to mainly see your commitment to the role to complete those volunteer tasks. I would say that's what we're mainly looking for. We don't want necessarily people to just suddenly duck out in the middle of their tasks while we did training. From an organization perspective, in spite of volunteer roles being non-compensated, they still take a certain cost from the organization because we do have paid employees tasked to manage these volunteer roles. So so there's that aspect. For a paid position, of course, that's what most people are applying to. They are, this is much more competitive. A lot of more people are rather hiring managers are looking for a lot of experience. This isn't super related, but just letting you know that if you put volunteer experience on your resume for a paid role, just know that that's taken really with a grain of salt, because as hiring managers or recruiters, we know that volunteer positions are not full-time, that they are maybe once a week kind of thing, and they by no means are equivalent to a full-time role, on your resume. So that's just something to know. But yes, there is a difference. Volunteers roles are definitely easier, and they actually don't necessarily go through a hiring manager. So just know that they'll most likely go through a volunteer coordinator, and these volunteer coordinators are, again, like I said, really looking for commitment to the role, not necessarily like ability to do the task, because usually these tasks are easy and non-performance related.
Okay, great, Sharon. And I did pick up on something that you said earlier about, of course, that might differ if the position itself is very competitive in terms of volunteer. And so I suspect for those roles that are a little bit more high in demand for people to want to volunteer in, for that process, they might consider writing a more formal cover letter and really putting a strong effort, a similar effort in as they would to perhaps paid position, if this was indeed something that was a more competitive volunteer role. Is that correct?
That's excellent. Yeah, thank you for adding that, Chantal. Yeah, definitely adding, just speaking more about your personal passion and why your off time, or I guess like why you'd be willing to do these tasks for free, essentially, without saying exactly that. Really stating that to your recruiter would really help. We volunteer positions, especially, we want to see that your heart's in it.
Great. Thank you for that, Sharon. All right, moving on to Rebecca. So Rebecca, here we have a two-part question. In accounting, there are pretty specific hard skills that employers are looking for. What would you say are the top soft skills accounting employers are looking for? And how would you suggest applicants present these soft skills on their resume?
Okay, great questions. And I'm hoping that the recruiters here today will agree with my response. Well, in terms of soft skills, or also, as I like to call them, transferable skills, what accounting employers I find are looking for, well, there's an endless supply. There's an exhaustive list. So I won't list everything, off the top of my head, but some of the ones that stand out to me are excellent communication skills, whether that is between internal colleagues with, say, a public practice firm, or if you're working for an employer and you are in the accounting department, or you have your CPA on it and are sharing information such as financial reporting with your CEO or CFO. There are also communication skills involved with external stakeholders. So if you are working on portfolios where you have a set of clients, being able to communicate effectively with those individuals, or if you are working with stakeholders such as individuals that are coming into the organization that you may need to train or provide support or mentorship to. So definitely communication, I find, is very, very important. Another skill that comes to mind that accounting employers are looking for is the ability to, it's related to communication, but it's also considered something called knowledge transfer. So knowledge transfer is the idea that you have a set of knowledge and understanding relevant to your role and position in a company, or a future role and position in a company. How will you be able to speak to that knowledge so that it is transferable to other colleagues that you work with and your external stakeholders? And especially in a profession such as accounting, where not everyone you engage with will have that niche set of skills and understanding or come from that type of background, it's very important that you are able to articulate what you need to get across to your colleagues or your other stakeholders. So I think, again, it seems like I'm leaning very heavily on communication, but there are a lot of skills or subsections of skills within that area. I would say another area that accounting employers are looking for in terms of skills is the interest in staying, how would I say this, motivated to learn and to continue to grow your skill set. And the reason I emphasize that is because if you do decide to pursue your CPA, you will be working full-time and going to school part-time to obtain your CPA designation. And that takes a lot of commitment. It takes a lot of independent learning, and it takes a lot of structure and focus. So there are a lot of skills or subsections of skills within that desire to continue to learn, to continue to educate yourself so that you can add continued value to your employer in your role as an accountant or whatever role you have in your future years. Just quickly, is how would I suggest applicants present these skills on their resume? In terms of presenting skills in the resume, my recommendation, and again, this is, I'm coming from a career counseling background, but I don't necessarily work as a recruiter, so you can hear from them as well. But the idea of being able to speak to a skill, in my opinion, is very important. So some people on a resume will list skills, and you might see a summary of skills section or a summary of qualifications. I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with that, except that if you list communication, if you only put that word, if you only put team player or critical thinker, the recruiter, in my opinion, doesn't necessarily know what that means. How are you actually leveraging that skill in your prior education, volunteer, and work experience? So my recommendation is you use those bulleted statements in your resume under your experience or volunteer section or educational projects, however you outline your resume. Use those bulleted statements to explain the skill in action. So if you are a good communicator, what does that look like in terms of your real life experience, and how will that add future value to your next opportunity?
Great. Thank you for that, Rebecca. Yes, absolutely. Because when we see it listed like that on a resume, it's really just a claim, isn't it? It's a claim until they can support that. And so by supporting it down in those skill statements, I think that's where we start to see it move into a more effective delivery. Okay, moving over to Kelly. So Kelly, another two-parter. How do I write an interesting introduction for my cover letter? And is it a must to include a unique selling proposition in the intro?
So for that interesting introduction, I would encourage you to work with the experts at your KPU Careers Development Office. And when it comes to a unique selling proposition, I like to call it unique value proposition, and perhaps that resonates a little bit more. So that would describe the talents you offer, how you will solve your hiring manager's needs, and what distinguishes you from the competition. So the question is it a must to include this unique value proposition? It's not a must, but I was thinking about it, and that's exactly what I did when I landed this role at Prospera. So it's something to consider, and I'll give you a bit of an inside scoop. I actually wrote to a manager over LinkedIn and sent them a message, and their response actually identified and said, wow, you've identified your value proposition, and I really appreciate what you've shared with me here. I'll make sure your application is noticed. So it's a bit of an example of how this can be quite powerful. Now, when it comes to cover letters, they're not a must for us at Prospera, though for roles that require strong writing, it makes a lot of sense. We'll be asking for a writing sample eventually, so it would be to your best interest to provide a strong, compelling cover letter from the get-go.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Kelly. I love how you shifted the terminology, unique selling proposition to unique value proposition. And I absolutely agree that it's not a must, but if you're going to write a cover letter, you might want to let them know about your value and how that connects with the company. Thank you for that. Gary, over to you. My work experience does not match what I'm studying at KPU. Do you have any tips on how I can best promote myself with my resume?
Yeah, it's kind of similar to what we had chatted about before. It's all about being able to show your applicable skills and experiences in that resume. We talk about the templates, and this is where you would probably want to have one where you're able to briefly summarize why you're applying for a role like this. This is where a cover letter is your friend in these kind of positions where you don't necessarily have the experience and you're sending a resume, something with a small or short cover letter indicating, hey, listen, I don't, necessarily have this, but these are the applicable skills. These are applicable experiences I've had. An example of that would be like, let's say you're applying for a supervisory role or management role. You've never been in one before. Talk about how you've led a team. Right? Give examples of that. Hey, led this project, or, trained individuals. Talk about that in your resume when showing your experiences, and really make sure that's relevant to the role you're looking at. Because otherwise, you're going to make the assumption that the recruiter is going to understand what you did and how it's applicable to the position, which they're not necessarily going to. So putting that straightforward, outlining that will make it a lot easier for them. And yeah, once again, I really do think in these kind of situations where, your experience doesn't match what you're studying and you're trying to utilize that resume, a cover letter is your friend, because that'll really allow you to elaborate more than just what you've done historically.
Excellent. Okay, thank you for that, Gary. Yes, so focusing on those transferable skills, and that's where a cover letter could come in handy, right? So you can really kind of expand on that experience that might not necessarily be front and center on a resume. All right, I'm just cognizant of the time, so we're going to hop over to Helen. Helen, what is the best way to answer the following interview question? What is your greatest weakness?
In my opinion, I think the best way is just always trying to gear it towards making it into a goal. It's amazing how a lot of people are able to self-reflect, and that's what I love to see in a lot of our candidates. So if they're able to let me know honestly what their weaknesses are, for example, it could be just having a hard time setting boundaries, saying no, not even having experience. A lot of people have shared that as well. And that's completely okay as long as you highlight what you're doing to turn that into a strength in a way, because that shows that you're working on your work ethic, you're working on your professionalism, you're working towards your career in the end of the day. So that's great. For example, not having experience, you can always work towards it by doing more research, connecting with other people, networking, attending workshops, as well as even volunteering, if that would help I guess, getting you more into the field as well. So as long as you add in any examples of you working towards that weakness and turning it into a strength, I think that would be the best way.
Okay, so incredibly important. It's not just an incomplete answer, but it could be detrimental if you don't finish it off with, so this is how I'm working on that, or this is how I'm actually turning that into a strength. Excellent insight. Thank you, Helen. And then finally for Lisa, as an international student, how can I best showcase my international experience and training to local companies?
All right. So I thought about this question quite a bit. And, Pinchin is an environmental services consulting company, and we're multidisciplinary. And a lot of the time, a lot of the resumes that we see or the education that we need, for example, having a Bachelor of Science or a degree in architectural technology, etc. So a lot of these programs and courses you can get internationally, right? So I think it's important to put it on your resume, first of all. That's the best way, first point. And secondly, to talk about it during the interview with the recruiter. Try not to gloss over it. Like, I find that some of the times when I speak to international students or soon to be graduates from KPU, for example, they'll say things like, well, I took this back home, but let's not talk about that too much. Let's sort of focus on this course here. But I'm like, no, let's backtrack, because this experience and this knowledge that you've gained is all relevant knowledge, right? And a lot of the times it's make or break. Like, for example, if you're applying to an occupational health and safety role with Pinchin, yeah, maybe because you did the same role in a different country, you might not be up to speed with the regulations and whatnot here, but these are trainable things, but you have the core knowledge, right? So I think the best way to showcase that experience and that training to local companies is to put it on your resume and don't shy away from talking about it in the interview. All experience is relevant experience.
Lisa, I cannot imagine how much our students are so happy to hear that. And while we tell them the same thing, it's important that it comes directly from industry as well. So thank you very much for that. That's excellent. And that's the end of the one-on-one portion of the panel. And I see that we're just down to a couple of minutes here. I will be opening it up for questions, but I certainly understand if any of our panelists today are unable rather to stay for our meeting. I'm just going to stop sharing. If some of our panelists here are unable to stay past for the Q&A portion, I certainly appreciate that. But I might just see if there are any general questions now from any of the students. Here we go. I'm just going to have a quick look in the chat. Or Michelle, I don't know if you've been keeping track of any particular
questions. Yes, for sure. Yes, thank you everyone for sharing all your insights about resumes, interviews, cover letters, and in general job search. It looks like we do have quite a lot of questions already in our chat here. In particular, one student had shared exactly her resume, just for like an overview of what you meant about a clean look about the resume. I'm not sure if any of the panelists have already seen it, but of course, feel free to give a comment if you have anything to share about the overall layout of a resume.
Yeah, for one like that, I would say it's great. It kind of outlines exactly what your skills and experiences are if you're looking at an IT one. So I'd want to see what are the languages that you know. So I can see there right off the bat, C Sharp, Python, Java, web development, but you also want to elaborate on those a little bit more when you go through your work experience. So, when you say web development, and I haven't gone fully through your resume, so sorry if I did miss that, but what exactly did you develop? What projects have you worked on that? What technology did you utilize? Were you, on the UI side or back end experience? Emphasize through projects, your role and your role in those projects when you are going through your actual work experience. And then, sum it up exactly with what technology you were using on those different projects. So, looking at your, technical support advisor, for example, what kind of technology were you providing support on, right? What exactly was it so we know what was the organization? Just a little bit more detail on that might help you when looking at different positions.
Thanks, Gary. Kelly, I believe you just unmuted yourself. Do you have anything to add?
Just a quick grammar tip. I notice on this resume, the detailed bullet points are starting with words like determining, and I encourage you to use words such as determined or coordinated or led. That demonstrates that you did the task and completed it.
Excellent point. Thank you, Kelly. For the next question, here from Natasha. During the interview, is it a good idea to mention that they have a disability? Is this something that anyone would like to touch upon?
I did respond in the chat. I had responded to an employee earlier in the week, so I had the answer real quick.
Okay.
And you'll see my response that it's really only relevant if the disability threatens the safety or property of others or prevents the applicant from safe and adequate job performance.
Wonderful. Thanks for bringing that up. And yes, I can see here that you did share an answer. Thanks for that, Kelly. For the next question, from Deepak, how can we get into the supply chain industry without having prior experience? I think, Gary, maybe you have something you can share about this.
Yeah, very similar to what I had mentioned before. Get your foot in the door at the organization. We have, for example, 3 of the 5 supervisors I have in the building I'm in right now are individuals who don't necessarily come directly from a supply chain background. One of them, for example, is able to explain, their sales and customer service background and how it's applicable to running and supervising a team. Other individuals started off in entry-level roles and worked their way up. So I would just say find an opportunity there. Supply chain industry especially, it's a lot more than just, on the floor positions. We have client services positions, people experience, accounting, finance, pretty much every department, for our organization, our own in-house, software developers, hardware support techs. So those are all roles we're currently recruiting for. Everything I've said right now. And, you have an opportunity, depending on if you want to get into the industry, to, just get your foot in the door with the organization, understand the business, show that you understand the business and that you're willing to, make that, learn the industry, learn the business so that you can move up and move within the organization. And those opportunities will be available internally as much as they are externally, if not more internally.
Thanks, Gary. I'm just going to switch it up. I do have a hand here from Tiff. Tiff, feel free to unmute yourself and show your camera and ask a question.
Hi, thank you. So the question I have for everyone would be, one, what type of jobs would be applicable for a student graduating from the Entrepreneurial Leadership Program at KPU? And secondly, specifically for Lisa at Pinchin, is there a role that you would suggest for an applicant with BBA in Entrepreneurial Leadership? Thank you.
Okay, so I would say more in our building sciences division as a project technologist is what I would suggest for you. So I'm sorry, are you asking like which role you should be applying to? I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, so I'm actually interested in the company because I'm striving to get a role in consulting, and I do really believe in sustainability. But I come from a background where I'm studying entrepreneurial leadership program, and I do have prior management experience, but I don't have any experience in regards to science or sustainability. So how would you suggest I go about applying for Pinchin?
Well, that's going to be a tricky thing because with all of the roles that we do have available, that technical piece is very important. I would say reaching out for volunteer work at Pinchin would be great. So through co-ops and or internships would be the most helpful and useful. But if you don't have that technical piece, that would be the best way to achieve it.
Okay, thank you. So you guys are offering internship roles right now?
Yeah, so we do have co-ops for sure.
Mm-hmm.
We are starting up the co-op program again, I believe in April.
Okay, I'll make note of that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I guess my general question is, just coming from the KPU school with the Entrepreneurial Leadership program, what jobs does everyone kind of suggest that I should go about applying for to start off with? Because ultimately I do want to get into consulting.
Yes, I think I guess as a general question, maybe I can open it up to other panelists here that can maybe share some insights.
Well, sorry, I just wanted to add another piece. Sorry about that. So I know you have the interest in sustainability, which is great. So what area in particular, though, are you looking more like building sciences, environmental due diligence and remediation? Hazardous materials, for example, might be a good one as well. And I'll say hazardous materials might be good because there's not necessarily training that you can take for a hazardous materials role. Okay. It's more so, trained for at Pinchin. So do you have an idea of where, like, I know consulting in general, but like in what area of consulting? More like structural or what are you looking at?
So my first choice would be something along supply chain sustainability.
Okay.
But what really does interest me about Pinchin is that it's got the core value. It's about sustainability and just environmental sustainability in general. So I haven't thought about a specific role that I would like to get into yet in regards to that. I just would like to incorporate my strategy skills and kind of learn more about the industry in order to really help businesses improve the sustainability in their supply chain and overall.
Okay. Well, I mean, after this call, because I don't want to take up time because I know there's so many other questions here, but we can always take this offline and you can send me a quick message directly and we can connect on this.
Okay, thank you. Can you send me your email
Yes.
in the chat, please?
I will put it in the chat. I'll put it in the chat.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Thank you, Lisa, for answering her questions. We are cognizant about the time. I will ask for a couple more questions and then we'll try and wrap it up right now. I think I picked a few questions here from me here. What is the best way to grab an internship at one of the desired organization? I'm not sure. Kelly, is this something that you can maybe answer for the student?
Our co-op is posted on prospera.ca/careers. And we ask for an application in the similar way that a professional would apply for our other roles. And then you'll receive a confirmation that your application has been accepted. And following our review of your application, essentially your resume and potentially a cover letter, we would consider reaching out and scheduling a screening interview. That would be about 15 minutes with a talent attraction team member. So just to give you an idea of how it works at Prospera.
Thank you, Kelly. And then this is, I believe, for Sharon. As a volunteer, what should be the desired skills that students should be sharing?
Yes, I also shared this. I answered this in the chats, but usually these volunteer roles are admin based or heavy. So I would say having admin skills such as being able to be well organized for tasks such as filing, any kind of sorting, those types of things. Having the ability, sometimes they'll ask you to do some writing. Those skills are really handy, especially if they're wanting you to write out a lot of forms on their behalf, things like that. For example, like at my organization, we have a front desk volunteer role every so often, and that would require phone answering. So having good phone skills and phone etiquette would be key. But the main thing would be having that ability to be flexible and to adapt quickly. Sometimes with volunteers, some roles aren't set in stone. Sometimes some volunteer positions are new, and then they'll say, oh, you know what, I actually need a volunteer to do this instead. I know that you volunteered for this, but we need you to do this. And being able to shift your priorities quickly is very helpful.
Awesome. I think I understand we still have a lot of questions coming in. What we'll do is we'll try our best to compile all the questions, and we can then share that with some of the panelists and see if they can also share some answers, and then we'll send it out to all the students. For now, Chantal, do you have any last minute notes that you want to share with everyone?
I do, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to quickly, in going through the chat too, I see that there's a few questions around what kind of position should I be applying for if I have this kind of background. I would recommend for everyone to do your research here and to research the companies that have attended here today, that are coming to Career Day in depth, to see where you can align those skills into which particular department or which particular role, because it can be quite a challenge for a recruiter to answer that type of question for you, and it really is up to you to do your due diligence and research to identify a connection for yourself and to pursue it. But I do want to thank the panelists for coming out today and giving us a few extra minutes of your time. It's so incredibly valuable to have you here and to have you speak to the students, providing them this really great information. And we just look forward to seeing you at Career Day. And thank you all again.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. For the students that are here today, I just want to let you know that we are, unfortunately, will not be doing the draw, but we have compiled all the list of the students. And once we are ready to do the draw, we will be doing probably a live later today and announce the winner through there. To the winner, we'll definitely call you or email you to let you know that you have won a $20 Tim Hortons gift card. And again, thank you for sending in your questions and also attending today's webinar. We do hope that we see you tomorrow for another webinar where we'll provide you more tips in terms of how to stand out and also how to navigate the whole virtual platform as well. And for any other questions, please email us at careers@kpu.ca. And there you go. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Where can we find the recordings of the sessions? I've tried looking on the website.
Sure. Yes, the recording is already available for the first two webinars. The recording is already available at kpu.ca/careerday. So let me just share the link. And if you actually go down to the webinar section, it already shows you that there is a link to watch the video. So watch the recording.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, no worries. And for this one, it will be it might take might be tomorrow or by the end of the day that we can upload this to YouTube. So but most likely the recording for today's panel will be available at least early next week. So yeah, you can definitely come back and watch the recording again.
All righty, I appreciate that. Have a great day.
Yes, no worries. Have a great day, everyone.